My name is Alan Long, Ward 4, Position 2, City Council Member.
My name is John Latour, Ward 4, Position 1, Alderman, and I represent everybody because my vote, like Alan's, counts for and against everybody. It affects everybody in our city. So we want to do a good job for all the city of Fayetteville.
That's right. So tonight we're going to be talking about 3 developments. I'll try to get them right this time. One at the Razorback Golf Course. That's potential. We don't have much information on it, but I know a lot of people are here to discuss it, so we'll take some input on that. And hopefully at the next meeting we'll have a representative from Lindsay that actually would like to talk about that. And then we'll be discussing the development with Brian Teague from Community by Design and his team. They're here with us for the development at the intersection of Razorback and Cleveland on the north side there. And also the development Rob Sharp is looking at doing off of Markham Road between Smith and Hornsby. So those are the 3 we'll discuss tonight. We'll start with the development off of, or at the intersection of Razorback and Cleveland, and we appreciate y'all being here. This is the Community by Design team, I like to call them. So, and y'all recently had a planning commission vote, and they denied the rezoning request for that location, but they're still looking at some plans. I'm not sure if y'all have decided to appeal to the city council or not, but they're going to kind of walk us through what that was. I know we've talked about that a few months ago, and it was more conceptual, so they're here for that update.
Yeah, everything's still kind of conceptual, so it's just a rezoning request that we have before the Planning Commission last Monday night, and a lot of you guys were there and saw the presentation that we gave. That kind of went over what the project details are, and so we just thought we would be available come tonight to answer questions, to get more feedback. We were going to show you some slides and give a little presentation, but we don't have those. We don't have the overhead available. Since Monday night, we really haven't decided how we are going to move forward. We're still working with the Jeske family to make that determination, but we should know sometime this week, but it's still a little bit early. So part of, I guess, there were a couple things in the presentation that I gave at the Planning Commission that I might try to just go over briefly. I think our project as proposed, it's 54 units. The majority of those would be single-family homes. It's on 4 acres, so total it's a density of about 14 units per acre. Most of it, all of it is 2-story or under 30 feet tall. And we feel like, you know, for this property, if we were able to find a way to get this built, you know, then it would definitely be quite a humble project, I guess, compared to the Project Cleveland project from a couple of years ago. It would be a good way to prevent something like that from being built on the property. Even if we aren't able to find a way to get our project built, you know, there's still going to be development pressure there. It would also, I feel like, be a good way to, as we have the project proposed, to prevent that connection of Razorback Road, you know, from going from Cleveland on down to Weddington. We presented, at the Planning Commission, we presented a fairly detailed bill of assurance. It's detailed but quite simple, I thought, that essentially limited us to 10 units per acre or 30 homes kind of on the north 3/4 or 3 acres of the property. And that was pretty much the gist of the bill of assurance. It limited us to building 30 feet. So that's about all I have right now. We'd be happy to answer questions.
I didn't make the Planning Commission, but what was the main objective to the project?
There were, I think, 3, from as far as planning staff's opinion, there were 3 primary things. One, they didn't feel like the bill of assurance was clear enough or enforceable. They thought that it was vague. We felt like we made it pretty simple. The city attorney felt like it was enforceable, so there was a little bit of a difference of opinion between the city staff on that. Also, the planning staff is wanting to see the connection on through from Razorback Road on through the property down to Weddington. And then I guess third, I mean, it's kind of related to the kind of related to the bill of assurance. They just didn't feel like the downtown general zoning category was appropriate. That's why we proposed the bill of assurance. I mean, that was in an effort to alleviate some of your concerns, because it throttled back that zoning quite a bit.
Now, just to clarify, did you mention that the planning staff wanted you to connect down to Weddington Village? I might have misheard you.
That's correct.
Did
Not all the way to Weddington, but they wanted us to provide the connection to the north end of our property, which essentially sets up that connection if the property to the north ever was developed.
Like a step out.
Right, yeah, right.
Beverly?
Yeah, Beverly.
So, that wasn't said at the planning commission meeting, anything about that. So, I didn't see it in anything that the staff wrote. I didn't see it in Jesse's summary of the project, anything. I did see that it doesn't meet the connectivity, standards of Unified Development Code, so, which, one way in and one way out.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't think anybody wants to see Razorback Road extended, to Weddington right there behind Sunset, or maybe anywhere, but I mean, the idea would be if it's stubbed out, it would be on the road would go into the development and out on the east end. I mean, you don't have to go straight back down Sunset and then ultimately set that up to be a connection all the way to Vista or Weddington. So I didn't hear any discussion of that at the planning commission. So.
And I talked to the planners pretty extensively. They never mentioned that.
Well, we don't want to make that connection either, but that's the way I interpreted their staff report. That's kind of what they are implying. They said that we failed to meet the connectivity requirements of the development code. I don't see them requiring us to stub out to the east or the west. I see them alluding to the fact that they're going to require us to stub out to the north.
Couldn't it just be another connection on the Cleveland? Couldn't it just be an in-out? I mean, I think they're just saying more than one way in and out. But, I mean, I just don't think that didn't seem to me as a basis for anybody's vote on the planning commission, that it wasn't discussed. So I'm just clarifying for myself that if I missed that, that's pretty important. That's a pretty important issue.
Maybe we can get clarification on that, because
I'll talk to Sherry tomorrow.
Well, sure, we don't have to have clarification now. It's just, ultimately, that's a really critical issue, because having that connection, or even setting it up to ultimately have that connection, really, it'd be pretty devastating to our neighborhood, I think, to have another.
And as the property owner, we don't want to start that rumor either, that there's going to be a road going through our property.
And your master street plan does not show Razorback going through our property. You pointed that out last Monday.
Right.
We would like to work with you guys to find a way to not have that.
We'll sell
that
to the UA
connection.
before we'd let Razorback go through.
You what?
We would sell to the UA before we would let Razorback go through.
We don't want that coming. If we were to get the project built, we don't want that connection coming through the project. We just think it would add too much traffic.
I think as far as connectivity, I've heard the planning staff talk about two entrances off of Cleveland, but I hadn't heard that yet. But I'll have a conversation with Jeremy tomorrow. I'll figure that out, and I'll update everyone on that.
Could you let me know?
I'll copy you. Yeah.
I don't know if it's an appropriate question necessarily, Alan, but as far, we are looking for feedback in regards to the number of units proposed, things like just in general, the density of the project.
Well, what I've heard from people here, and then I'll just open it up for everyone to go through, parking has been a concern, enough parking for every residence there. Tree preservation, I know that was something that was an issue for you as the designers and developers. It's something that I've heard. I'll just open it up. There's many other points that people have brought up.
I think when you're building student housing like this, that you've really got to plan on more parking than what you have bedrooms for. Because you're going to have 2 to 3 kids for every, 2 to 3 cars for every kid that's there. Because that's... And 2 scooters. And 2 scooters. Because if you look at, if anybody, I don't know if anybody's ever gone through Creekmore, you know where Creekmore is off of Lewis? I went by there twice today, and you could barely drive down through there because of all the kids parking in the driveway and parking on the street and in the yard. And so as y'all plan this student housing project, I would really emphasize that you need to look at the parking overflow. And I'd put in as much parking as you possibly can, because they're going to be, for every student, there's another student there with them.
Can I answer his question? I think it's important for us to make it clear that we don't want this to be a college housing project. We're trying to build it for all age range, just a complete a neighborhood, I guess, just a mixture of people living there.
What was your price points?
What's the price point? I don't. We probably don't want to discuss that, but
yeah, I mean anything under 250 is going to be student.
We're trying to find ways that not to make it not student housing. But I think after the last ward meeting, we heard a lot of concerns about parking, and we found ways to add 10 to 15 parking spaces to our total, which gets us real close to having 1 per bedroom. There are also concerns with parallel parking on the street. And I think with that additional 10 to 15 off-street parking spaces, that we could meet the parking requirements of the development code anyhow with off-street parking, and then there would be additional on-street parking, but it wouldn't be, that on-street parking wouldn't be required to meet the code requirements.
Well, you have to. I don't remember seeing any scooter parking on there either.
We
Did you have scooter parking on there?
Not in particular. We're not quite at that level of detail.
Because they're going to bring a truck and a scooter.
We see that at a lot of houses around the university.
So you got that on scooter parking.
Insured scooters.
Insured students, good point.
Archie, I think you have your hand up next.
Yeah. You asked for feedback from us on density and how many units and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
I think 54 units is too many, probably. I don't know what the right number is, but I think for parking reasons and others, 54 is too many. But I just wondered if you could explain to us how you arrived at 54 units. I mean, how did you all decide that that was the right number to put in there?
Right. Well, it just goes back into running the development performance and, looking at the amount of money that we're going to have to spend to improve the property according to, the city requirements. And then we need a certain baseline number of units to make the project feasible.
What is that baseline? Do you know it?
No.
I'd like you to calculate that. Or if I were the Jeske family, I'd calculate it.
Right. I mean, we can run numbers in the spreadsheet, but I don't feel like that we can discuss all that necessarily at this time.
Well, I think the neighborhood's going to want the number to be as small as possible, and the Jeske's going to want the number to be as big as possible. to make it economically feasible. You know, if you get the number, Archie, if you get the number small enough, they can't do it. You know.
Well, that's their problem.
Right.
I don't think the neighborhood needs to commit to letting them put enough houses in there to be able to make however much money they think they need to make. So.
I mean, I think, you know, Project Cleveland, it was less property than it was 2.7 acres. They were proposing 122 units, so that was, I guess, very attractive and worked financially for them. We're quite humble, I think, with our proposal compared to them, and it's not something that the Jeskis want to just try to get as many units as possible to make as much money as possible. I mean, it's important to them that it fits into the neighborhood and it's appropriate, the scale's appropriate, and so we've tried really hard. I mean, 2 stories, and still making the numbers work, and that's why we're having so much difficulty with the zoning, because it's just not, there's not many zoning categories that's geared towards that mixture of unit types. It's either big apartment buildings or big single-family homes, and so that middle ground is hard to find a zoning category to make that work.
Okay, I've had 3 hands up, so I've got to come to Susan, and then Beverly, and then Mary, sorry.
I'm just not up to speed on this project, and my question is, since I haven't seen the plans or been to other meetings, is, are we talking townhouses when we're talking 14 per acre? Are they going to be connected? Are they 2-bedroom? I mean, I kind of want to know what that 14 included in that.
It really is a mixture. Primarily, we were trying to do mostly. So there's some detached single-family homes. There are some attached single-family homes where there would be no more than 2 attached.
Like a duplex?
Yeah, and that's the general consist. I think there are some of those single-family homes where in the back you would have a garage, and the owner of that house would be allowed to build an apartment above the garage. So that's the general breakdown of the unit types, if that makes sense.
That's very dense for 1 acre. I live on 1 acre and I have a house.
You're looking at 4 acres.
Yeah, she was saying 14 per acre. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, they're looking for zoning where the zoning is already RSF4. And a very small portion, I don't know, of the 3.9 acres, over 3 acres, is RSF4, which is 4 to an acre. And I don't exactly know, Beverly, was it a half acre or 3/4
I think
acre?
isn't it like .7 or is it a
What's that?
RF 24?
0.5.
Small.
I thought it was an acre. The staff report says it's .75, so
That's what I thought.
somewhere in that
Whether it's an
ballpark.
acre or a half acre. Okay, thank you. So my point is, I own property right next to the Jeskis as well, and I'd always planned RSF4, that's what it's zoned, that's what I'm going to eventually build on it, half an acre. And I think, as a citizen and as an owner of property adjoining them, that the appropriate zoning should apply to what it is zoned now. The RSF 24, that 1/4 acre or whatever, 3/4 acre you have there on the edge, I mean, obviously you could build that, but I think if the commissioners don't, and planning commission doesn't decide that RSF4 is appropriate, which I think it is, I think the majority of the owners here believe it is too, that then the alternative is for you to come up with something that is close to RSF4, not RSF24. That's my opinion.
Right.
Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a city, like, long-term goal for that being a city neighborhood, right, which is more dense than RSF4?
Right.
In the land use plan?
Right. The future land use plan, it essentially, east of Razorback, it encourages, or it's designated city neighborhood, which encourages, I think, projects just like this, where it talks about a little bit higher density, a mixture of unit types, and then the way the future land use map lays everything west of Razorback is lower density, just single family residential homes. So just simply to say that that's what the future land use plan is. We're on the east side of Razorback, and we're right on the line, but it's kind of encouraging us to develop at a higher density. But originally we had looked at the existing zoning and what that allowed, and we thought it was an acre of RMF 24, so that would be 24 units, 3 acres of RSF 4, which would be 12 units if you developed single-family homes. In that code, in the RSF 4 zoning code, it allows you, if you get a conditional use permit, to do 2-family. It allows 7 units per acre on those 3 acres, so 3 times 7 would be 21. So that kind of put us at the existing zoning. When we started, we felt like, well, that's allowing us to do up to 45 units. I know when you get into the development code, it's not going to because of the regulations and lot sizes, it's not going to let you get that density. But that's kind of where the mindset was coming from.
Okay, well, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sorry what you just said, but I'll have to look at the zoning further.
Walt, you had a...
Yes, would the Jenskys consider more premium housing? The presupposition is this is going to be student housing. I know a number of, since this is called Arkansas Legacy, why don't you build on the concept of building premium one-story homes for old farts like me who want to move back to their campus, and instead of selling a $250,000 house, that will be student housing. We have to worry about big Texas trucks and other things. Why don't you look at premium housing for alumni who would come back? That would be an ideal place to put housing like that for people who would like a place near campus to come back to. If it's going to be a legacy, it strikes me as though that would be a radical change for the development in Fayetteville. I mean, everything is being built now for collegiate housing, and frankly, I'm getting tired of that. I mean, there are other people who want to move here, and they're looking for some premium houses, and that's not out there. I'm looking for a single-story house. I can't find one.
The best way I know to answer that question, Walt, is we're trying to be inclusive for what you just described, but then also, people who've just graduated from the university, people who are working at the university, and again, I mean, we don't want it to be a college housing undergraduate project, and that's our concern as well.
If you take it more to the premium end of the pricing scale, that is a place. It used to be that professors lived all around the university in Fay Jones houses. All right, that's what it was like when we moved here. All right, now those Fay Jones houses are student housing, and so the question is, what can you do? I think this would be a real opportunity for you all to show your stuff and put. I see it as a gated community for seniors or professors or family who want to move there. That would certainly make the rest of us in the neighborhood happy, and would really help my property value.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
We talked about it being gated. I mean, it's something that the family that they're interested in.
I don't think you can do gated Fayetteville.
City's not
Currently.
necessarily interested in that.
And something else you have to consider, Walter, there's some wealthy Texans who send their students to Fayetteville to school. Just because you set the price point high doesn't mean students won't live there. There might be a tendency to have fewer students there.
That's my point.
But you may have
It's a
some
math
students.
problem.
Well,
But, the Jeskys could get fewer houses and get more money for fewer houses if they're premium properties. And it's at a point, if you look at the area around it, there is no other place where you could put premium housing and have it accessible to the university and make it a walkable community and all that other hoo-ha the city planners want. I mean, it would be an ideal place. Why is Lionel building all the sidewalks if we don't want to walk through the neighborhood?
Right.
Good questions. So what's your price point? $500,000?
I think
$750,000? $1 million?
380,000, 400,000. I mean, if you look at the houses that are made for seniors with all the appliances and everything else in them, it's 390, 400, 450,000. And that way, you don't have to be downtown in Ward 1. You could be up by the university a little bit from downtown, but still right there on campus. Arkansas legacy. That's what I thought it was supposed to be when it all started out. It seems though you all are missing the point.
Can you make money that way? Can the Jeskies make money?
I don't know. We could look at it.
I just wanted to say, I have to agree with, well, my in-laws are moving up here from Russellville, and they were looking for housing in this exact area being discussed, and they couldn't really find anything nice to live in that area, so they ended up buying in Tawnytown, because they're not even living in Fayetteville.
And that was an improvement?
Well, they're going to build. But is that even worth discussing here? Like, is it even up for discussion what kind of housing they're catering to, or are we just wasting time making suggestions? Just as
I really can't talk about it that much without my client here, to tell you the truth. I think that we're kind of painting the picture that we're not going to make these nice upscale homes, and I don't think that's accurate. I don't know, Tim, if you want to add anything to that. Tim's the architect.
And so when we were first approached by the Jeskies, I brought Brian into the project because, again, Brian's new urbanist kind of tendencies fit well within the city's goals, and I felt like he was the right person for the team. And we also talked with the Jeskies about doing something more appropriate for the neighborhood, not doing a project Cleveland, not doing an apartment housing complex. And the Jeskies described the people that wanted to live in the neighborhood, and that did not include undergrads. They wanted to hit price points that hit graduate students, professors, and anybody else, young professionals that wanted to live close to the university. So that's been the goal for a while anyway. But we're also, I think, looking at some of the trends in housing too, which is a smaller home. People are going back to smaller homes. So doing a premium house on the property, 4 bedrooms, 2 or 3 car garage might not fit that demographic well. So that's why we've gone the way we've gone. I know y'all have only seen some images of the houses. You have a very eclectic neighborhood, right? You have a lot of different styles. So we're trying to find something that's appropriate in the look and the scale and the quality. So.
As someone who within the last 3 years bought premium housing right next door to your project, I think I would say from our part, we live right next door at 1400 West Cleveland, with a young family who enjoy the walkability of where we live. I walk. I know you guys walk. I can tell you that students don't walk. It is an issue with the multiple vehicles, and I know that you're trying to design something, as you keep saying, that is going to be sympathetic to the neighbourhood, that you're going for this lower rise thing, which I think you're also a little bit bound to because of the existing zoning. The other thing that I think affects who is going to live there is the quality of life, and that includes stuff like tree preservation. It includes how green that property is. It includes stuff like
that road that will come directly up, right up, pretty much against our house with no real buffering. Those things affect whether people with kids, professionals, those sort of things, university lecturers want to live there or not. And I think to what Archie said, I'm not sure what the number is, and you obviously have to do your numbers, but 54 feels like a lot. And I know that one of the issues that steered you towards downtown general was because you were having problems with making it work with the tree preservation requirements under the zoning that actually everyone was urging you to go for, which was PPD, as far as I understand. It also seems like there were some signals that the city might be able to work with you on that. And so whether having from the beginning of the process had this sort of urging towards PPD, whether there's not something achievable that gets you guys what you want, but it is, in line with kind of in the neighborhood's interest of something that doesn't damage our property values, brings the right kind of people in, and keeps it looking nice with enough trees. There are beautiful mature trees on that property, a lot of them. And I appreciate that makes it hard for infill development, but that's the property we've got.
Well, I want to be clear about the tree preservation. That is the main reason that we didn't do a PZD, and then we were trying to do downtown general with the bill of assurance. At the same time, I've said it at the planning commission meeting. There's 240 some odd trees on the property, and we have planned to save 166 of those trees, so over 2/3 of those trees. And I feel like that it's a very respectable thing to do. The family's proud of the trees, and we want to keep as many of them as possible. So I feel like our tree preservation plan is appropriate, but when you look at the way that the tree preservation ordinance is written and the way it does all those calculations, I mean, we don't meet the requirements that are attached to a PZD.
Because that's canopy, right, rather than just numbers of trees.
Right.
Which is kind of what we see when we look, though, and that's what gives neighbours privacy and gives you the cushionness. Because not all trees are created equal. We can, like 250 trees. And
right. Yeah. And, another thing you have to look at, I mean, that's one of the reasons that we were able to keep everything at 2-story, because, if you do 54 units at 2 stories, you got to spread out a little bit more. You could have more tree preservation if you went taller. So those are just all things that that goes into the master plan that we've created.
You obviously, I can understand why you can't share your baseline in terms of number of units for the math. Do you know what the baseline is in terms of number of units if you were going to stay within the canopy requirement?
I don't think that the project would be feasible, honestly.
Ballpark, how many fewer would you be looking at?
I think you would be looking at another, I don't know, honestly, I don't know.
Now, from the planning commission, did I not understand that there's not even been a tree survey, or the forestry people for the city have not been out and looked?
Well, that was something that I didn't really understand, because we did meet with the urban forester multiple times. We have a letter from the urban forester that talks about those meetings, but the plan staff didn't incorporate that into their report.
And I'll just jump in and say that, because I know the presentation that Brian had prepared, he was supposed to get 20 minutes, and he was cut short after about 12, right when he was about to get into the tree preservation and everything else.
Right.
So he didn't get the opportunity to really give his presentation at the meeting. And I think that was unfortunate, because everybody didn't get to hear the whole presentation.
And also, if you did go, instead of the downtown general and the PZD, what is the percentage they were talking about? They said something about 25% preservation. Is that the guideline, and that's the one that's
the requirement for a
the
PZD,
requirement,
right?
yes. But then they were also talking about that you can seek a variance for that
Right.
with the forestry report, but they were acting like, and I thought y'all had already talked to the forestry at some point, so it makes it a little bit, you know, it's easier to look at if you try to, I kind of felt like it was going backwards because they were encouraging you to look for a PCD at the same time saying, well, you might be able to get a variance for that.
And we, right.
And the numbers were not presented to as far as, well, we did the tree survey and y'all are at 22% or whatever it is. You know, that would have been helpful for us to look at, you know, how far of a percentage are you off with what their requirement is for the PCD. I think that would have been very helpful to look at. And I don't know if it's my turn on, but y'all were talking about some of the concerns. I'm still concerned about that road coming out onto Cleveland in the morning. And I don't know how many, do you know how many parking places now you're talking about? You had mentioned possibly 10 to 15 more. So the total number of cars that you're talking about for the project right now are parking.
We feel like if we added 10 or 15, then we would be right at about 125 parking spaces.
And so, as I've stated before at the meetings here, my daughter goes to Fayetteville High, and just about the only way you can get there, you know, is to come that direction. And already that three-way stop at Razorback will now be a four-way stop at Razorback in Cleveland. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, it already backs up almost to Leverett School. So you're talking about another 125 cars in the morning, you know, possibly that are all trying to get out of that same intersection that have not been there before. And so that's a concern. And then just like you were talking about, the people that walk the neighborhood, the people that walk to Leverett School, most of them walk on that side of the street right in front of your house. And so again, they're going to have to dodge, you know, cars coming out of that area in the morning trying to get wherever they're trying to go, as well as the concern about one entrance in and out for fire, you know, the fire trucks and all the other things if it only has one entrance on Cleveland. So that's some of my concerns. Already it's a very congested neighborhood, and yes, I know it's supposed to be walkable, but I would say at least 50% of those people are not going to be walking. They're going to be driving somewhere, you know, in the morning, and that concerns me with all that additional traffic right there.
So I think, because I know you've also mentioned the entrance, a lot of people have mentioned the entrance at Razorback.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's going to be a city planning almost directive. Is that not correct?
Right. I think the engineering department will require us to line the entrance up with Razorback and create a four-way.
Oh, no, I understand that. I
And
agree
that's-
that it's the most logical thing. However, that number of cars coming out, you know, out of a basically a closed neighborhood, there's no other way to get in and out of that neighborhood. So everybody that leaves is going to have to come out of that entrance.
But if Walt's idea is adopted and we make it a more of an elderly
Yeah, they're
neighborhood.
not anywhere at 8 o'clock in the morning.
That's right, they don't have a place to go.
Wait on the yeah.
That would help that traffic problem.
And I will say what you were talking about, I finally almost had to quit working in my front yard from people stopping wanting to purchase our 6 acres in the back specifically for that. They want to build, you know, they want to build a one-story home. They want it to be capable to be, as you age into it, something that, you know, can go with you as far as the appliances, handicapped access for potential later showers and all of that. I mean, it's unbelievable the number of people that want to build that in that neighborhood. It's a constant request. And I would say more people probably contact us about that, selling a portion of our land, than the developers. And believe me, there's lots of developers as well. But that is definitely...
We've had one developer contact us about student housing. We probably had between 8 and 12 people that are interested in trying to develop the RSF 0 land as estate-sized lots, large houses.
Whatever the market will bear, if that's what they want.
Well,
That would be more of what you like anyway, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
we'd like the RSF 0 right now.
Right. It's your land, do it as you please.
We
We
have
have-
Wellington.
Oh, you do?
And on Vista. Yeah, the Vista.
Yeah, that's our
Our property
driveway.
has on Vista and on Weddington, so it wouldn't have to come through the other direction.
Do we have any more questions for Brian and his team specifically? I know we have another item on the agenda. Yes.
So during the planning commission meeting that I attended, there was another project that they were working on, and they were kind of in the final stages. And they had somebody on this Fayetteville's board that gave an estimate of each house would, and I think I understood this correctly, but I may be wrong, but each house would have 2 cars, say. And so the average trips that one house would make per day are 8 to 10 trips. Okay, so if you're talking, say, let's just round it up to 10, because it's easy for me to calculate. So say you have 54 homes, and each home has 2 cars, then you're talking about 540 trips, each in and out, that will be made out of that street. So that is some kind of known calculation that the city had stated during that planning commission. So we're talking about a lot of cars coming and going for those 54 homes that you're thinking about.
Yeah, if you use 10 trips per house, then it's 500, then if we were to
Yeah.
build all 54 homes, then yeah, it'd be 540 trips, assuming that they drove everywhere they went, which
Well, that's
a lot of them
apparently,
may very well do.
Yeah, and that's apparently a given, known estimate that they use when they're planning, you know,
Right.
the city's planning, so.
Yeah.
yeah, development,
They use that in, I mean, that's for generally on the edge of town where you have to drive everywhere. You might get it might be a little bit smaller if some people happen to walk some places. But looking at the traffic analysis, so we get the traffic engineers to look at putting that number of cars at that Razorback Cleveland intersection, it will show that there's not a huge impact there, that it's not necessarily very, very significant. I know that most people wouldn't agree with that, but that's what the traffic engineers would say.
And the other thing I want to say is, I was walking through that intersection quite often. A couple years ago, we had a big dog. Anyhow, and I noticed that at that intersection, the students, or everyone just kind of rolls through that intersection. They are not completely stopping, so finally they did put crosswalks in, but people are still rolling through. So I called the city, the police, Fayetteville Police, and just said, can you send a car down there? I never see a police officer sitting there. And they said, well, that's actually police by the university. So I called the university to ask them to send a car down there to observe, and I never once saw a car. So you also have to remember that that is not a Fayetteville police area. It is a university police area. If that makes any difference, for
Well, there's
monitoring.
there's a boundary around the university. The Fayetteville Police do respond to a lot of calls in that area, and sometimes the university police does also, but
Right.
But I will say, if you call the 911 number and give them my address, they will tell me I need to call the university police.
Oh.
And then I tell them, well, then why am I paying my taxes for city services? You need to look again. So I'm not near that corner of Cleveland and Hall. I'm midway down the street.
Our 911 tells you hang up and call somebody else. Tell them you're shot.
Or shot somebody. But that's happened on more than one occasion. Or if you just call the non-emergency number to report someone parking on the street or whatever, they will tell you, it shows up on the map as a university
Address.
Susan, I'll follow up on that for you. Well, that, I appreciate y'all coming and going through some things. Just to recap some of the major things we talked about traffic again, and the density, tree preservation, and something I know a lot of you had emailed me about and we talked about was the downtown zoning district and not wanting to set a precedent for that there, given the fact that so many more developments are probably in the works that we haven't even heard about yet. So that's kind of where we're at, and we'll look forward to hearing more after y'all decide where you plan on going. And as soon as they let me know, I'll let everyone else know. So I'll keep everyone in the loop as I'm informed.
Thank you guys
Thank
for all
y'all.
the feedback.
Yeah.
It really does help, and it gives us a lot to talk about.
Thanks, Brian. All right. So Rob, are you here? Not sure if Rob Sharp's team joined us or not. I don't see him here. Okay, well, maybe they decided not to join us tonight. They were confirmed to come. We can invite them back for the next meeting, I guess. I was looking around, I didn't see them.
Can you give us a little overview on that subject, or have they
I
filed anything?
can tell you what he told me during our brief conversation. Between Smith and Hornsby off of Markham, just north of Markham and east of the parking lot, they want to replace the rent houses that they feel need to be torn down. Currently, this was on the 29th of last month, they were thinking about single-family housing neighborhoods. It's RSF 8, and they want owner-occupied homes. They said they were going to come tonight with preliminary sketches, but that's all they've given me so far. The current owner is Brian Rendell. That's all they've said. They said they wanted to have a neighborhood meeting with University Heights, but after confirming to come to this meeting, they haven't given me any more information. So
They told you they wanted to build owner-occupied homes?
single family.
Is it currently RSF 8 or RSF 4?
It's different parcels. So
Oh, is it?
There's a mixture, but they want RSF 8.
For all of it?
Is what they want for all of it.
So they want to develop the entire space between Hornsby and Smith, because there's 7 houses there.
He didn't share that information with me. So,
It could be a vast improvement.
yeah, we'll see what they come back with. I'll have to contact Rob after the meeting and see. Maybe he wrote it down wrong or something on his calendar.
Isn't that right next door to you, Alderman LaTour?
It's not next door to me, actually.
Tell me a little
Ms.
bit.
Schaefer.
Close, very close by, nearby.
It's in my neighborhood, yes, but there are 2 or 3 houses between me and them. Remember, I'm the guy that likes private property rights.
It's hard to tell because the Smith kind of...
Smith dead ends
Yeah.
into Harold
dead ends,
McKinney's
so
property.
You don't really go down there, I mean, you don't see
Oh.
that. Hornsby dead ends too.
Nobody trespasses on Mr. McKinney's property.
Well, I will get more information on that, and I will email it out if they're still in the works. Like I said, I'm not sure why they're not here. So, did anyone have any did anyone come for the Razorback golf course discussion? I figured we had a handful here. Lindsay hasn't volunteered to come to the meeting and talk. I'm going to invite them to our July meeting. I still don't have a detailed, formalized plan that they've submitted. Of course, everyone's seen what was in the paper. Actually, Northwest Arkansas Times found out about it before I did. So, and I know I've received a lot of phone calls and emails, and I'm sure Alderman LaTour did as well.
I have something to say.
Please.
I don't believe that Lindsay Management should be able to build apartment houses wherever they please. So let me start out by saying that. I have to balance that thought and that notion, and I know all of you in the neighborhood don't want apartment buildings next door. I don't blame you. I wouldn't want them either. Okay? But my heart goes out to the owner of the golf course who may be losing a lot of money, and we've got to get him a way out, or her a way out, okay?
But that's not our responsibility.
That's right, it's not. I agree, it's not.
So we don't have to.
We didn't tell him to buy.
But what I'm saying is it really fair for me as an alderman to say, sorry, you can't sell to Lindsay, because we're not going to let Lindsay develop. So you're just stuck there. Is that really fair to him?
That's not what
Lindsay,
our
I
complaint
went to
is.
the meeting with Lindsay.
Yes?
The one that they had with for the neighborhood around it.
Yep.
And they kept saying over and over, this property is going to be developed. It's not by us, by someone. And so they're right. Like, if Lindsay doesn't develop this, somebody will, and then the owner can sell it to someone else who
Yes.
will build single-family homes.
That's fine. And if the owner, if whoever buys the property, or if Lindsay Management buys the property, if they can make their normal rate of return on building single-family housing, that would solve the problem.
They don't do that.
But, sir,
Yes.
the access, I was just at the other meeting. I've been at the one that we went to, and then I went to the one tonight at
Yes, ma'am.
the Pines. And all they're interested in, strictly, period, is the apartments. They don't care anything, as they will tell you. They care nothing about building any single-family homes. What they have, I have the maps with me. I have been to every meeting that they have had. They are going to build 613 units, and there is only one access in and out of that whole area, and that's Dean Solomon Road. And that is a 2-lane road, even if they make it a 3-lane road with a turning. Their entrance, just visualize for a second what I'm saying. With that many apartments, and they're going to build 50 row houses along Dean Solomon Road, and they're building 49 condos, and the entrance to their property will be right between either the Pines Apartments or right by the other development that has nicer homes. And if there was a fire or a grounding, getting fire engines and police in and out of that complex, and something happens in the development for retired people, and they have a need, there's the bottlenecking at both ends of that road are so bad that the lives that we would lose because of not being able to get people where they need to be would be nobody to blame but the Planning and Zoning Commission that approved such a thing to happen. And if the infrastructure were right there for that, where you could get in and out, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I think I've lost children. I've lost family, as we all have. And when it's at a time when minutes, seconds count, that's what matters.
I mean,
Let me go on record, I'm against losing life, and I'm all for public safety, okay? But now, we can change the width of a street. We can require more entrances, other places. Those things can be worked out. But I'm not arguing in favor of apartment houses. I'd like to see the character of the neighborhood stay what it is, single family, or...
Yes, we don't have a problem. I don't think any of us, as property owners in there, have a problem with single-family homes.
Okay.
What we have a problem with is having 3,000 people up and down that road, and the schools are already overloaded. We just don't, it's just a bad situation.
Yes, in the back of the room.
okay. It's not a good argument to complain about, like, ambulances and stuff, because we can always argue, and the Planning Commission can always make them widen the road all the way down. Now, right now, they don't have to, but they could make them. What is a better argument for your case is to talk about the population density, because that's something that we all have in common that we're concerned about. No matter if it's apartment or row houses, we want the minimum number of houses in there.
Sure.
And Lindsay has said that they are not interested in building anything other than apartments. They said that at the last meeting. They said that's all we do apartments. And so we are saying, well then, let's not let Lindsay rezone it.
Well, and we have some say, we have a political power here, we can say, sorry, we're not gonna let you build apartments, so that's all you build, and we're not gonna let you build it, go build someplace else.
Yes. And
Somebody else will
the
develop
owner
it.
will not be stuck, he can sell to a developer that will build houses.
Well, I need to talk to him, we need to hear from him or her, whoever that owner is, I don't know who that is.
He came to the last.
Okay, it's a him? All right. I've heard some people, I've heard a lot of opinions, and I agree with most of them. But somebody said, we like looking at the golf course, the green golf course. And I said, well, if you like that, you need to put together an investment group, buy it, and leave it green. And it won't get developed at all. But it's not fair for us to tell the private owner, we like looking at your green space, even if you may be losing hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, we're not going to let you change it.
Sure,
I mean,
he can develop it if he wants, but we do not want it rezoned.
I think he's lost so much money, he might not can afford to develop it.
So, I've seen two hands up for quite a while. Before I go to those, I'm gonna just clarify one thing real quick. I know you mentioned that the planning commission could rezone it. Just to clarify, the city council is the only people that can rezone it. So they can recommend to us to do so, and they can appeal that, but I don't plan on voting to rezone that property to multifamily, period.
Thank you.
So, I'll go to the gentleman right back here first.
Well, I think
and then,
she brought up one of the issues that Lindsay doesn't want to build any homes. So they've said at every meeting, they want to build the apartments, and then they're going to sell that northern part of the golf course to somebody else to develop for who knows what. Now, that northern part is in a floodplain. It's going to be expensive to build there, okay? So whoever develops that is probably going to put in some very small, dense housing in order to be able to accomplish that.
Well, if it's more
That's one point, huh?
if it's more expensive to build there, maybe there'd be a tendency not to build there at all.
Possibly, he'll find nobody to do it. Okay?
Which would,
Possible.
from the neighborhood perspective, that'd be the best
Be
of all
great
worlds.
for us, sure.
It'd stay green.
But there's no guarantees. I mean, if they rezone that and allow him to build the apartments.
I don't think he's gonna be able to build apartments. I'm probably the most conservative member of the city council, and I'm 90% sure I'm gonna vote against apartments.
But you need to get to 100%.
Well, you're helping me get there.
Can I ask you just a question? I'm just curious why the city, I mean, this supposedly has been for sale for 10 years. It's the only public course that I'm aware of, and certainly in Fayetteville or northwest Arkansas. Why wouldn't the city have been interested in buying that property for a park when you've already got trails and bike trails and, they've got everything they want?
I can kind of address some
Okay.
of that. During the public input sessions that the city's had, that hasn't been something that has been put as a priority. I did respond to several people asking me about the city, the possibility of buying it and running it as a municipal golf course.
Right.
But looking at the fact that they're losing money as it is, and the city would have to invest a lot of money from the general fund in order to start a new enterprise fund to run that. That's what we would have to do that as, like we do water and sewer. It just wouldn't cash flow, and the city wouldn't have that initial $5+ million, I believe it would be, to purchase
Well,
the land.
you purchased the land down in South Fayetteville that you don't even have utilities on.
That
You don't
was
have
purchased
anything down
for the
there.
regional park, but that was listed as one of the priorities from citizens that gave input for what they wanted for the city, long range, long time ago. But there's a substantial difference in the cost there. The enterprise fund to run a golf course would be millions every year, probably.
And the second thing is, it is historic, that property. I mean, that golf course has been there, I think, 55 years or better. I was a member of that golf course when they built it, and I'm 70. And I was just a kid, okay?
You have to realize land uses change over time, and
I understand.
we want, as a community, we want land to be utilized to what we call, you've heard this term in your real estate course if you took one, highest and best use. Meaning, we want economic utility out of our land. I think the current owner has already shown us that maybe operating a golf course is not the highest and best use. If it were the highest and best use, he should be prospering. Apparently, I haven't seen his financials. I don't know what kind of shape he's in. He might can afford to buy us all out. Who knows?
Could be
His
poor
name is
management.
Ron, it's Ron and Linda Cabanis, they're the owners.
I don't know them.
I'm just letting you know.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
There are other issues like the schools. I mean, all of the schools in that area, that neighborhood are at 110% of capacity right now. And you're gonna dump another, I don't know how many kids in there. And one of the meetings, they mentioned, well, we'll just bus them to Root and Washington, overflow. Well, who wants their kids bused across town?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Right. I really don't think you have a lot to worry about. I think the city council is not going to give them that rezoning,
Okay.
whichever way I vote.
Makes me happy.
So we have,
Just a couple of points. Number one, we're assuming he's competent running that golf course.
Yeah.
You may not be.
I mean,
I agree.
it may be grossly mismanaged. We
Right.
have no idea. The
Right.
second thing I'd like to make the point is, I don't want the city council to think Lindsay's his solution to the course. I mean, it's 125 acres, you sell it for 40 grand, you got 40 grand an acre. So there's all kinds of solutions to his financial woes, and I don't want the council thinking everything hangs on Lindsay buying this property. I think that's a gross, just miscalculation, and I just cannot believe this guy. And the third point, and I'll be quiet, is why should, I don't know how many homes are in those subdivisions, 500?
Oh, yeah, but.
Why should 500 families suffer for one person's mistake?
When 500 people buy, I made this point to a fairly prominent citizen.
Yeah.
His house is near, or their house is near the golf course, if not contiguous. And I made the statement to him, when you buy property or you build a house next door to a golf course, you're assuming a risk that it may not always be a golf course.
Oh, I'm not contesting that.
Okay.
I fully understand that land's got to be developed, but not adding apartment units in.
I don't think anybody wants apartments, but maybe Lindsay.
and we also have to consider that land is very environmentally sensitive. I mean, very environmentally sensitive. There are a lot of species that live there that are not found in other parts of Arkansas at all. So that's a consideration too.
One of the things we haven't addressed is the flooding in that area. Currently, my husband and I live our backyard looks out onto the golf course.
Yes, ma'am.
And while we hate to see the golf course go away, because it's been very nice to look at.
Sure.
2 years ago, the golf course, when we had a lot of rain, it flooded so bad they had to close Dean Solomon and close Salem as well. I've seen it where you can look out in our backyard and you can't see any golf course. It's like a river flowing. And we are already so wet. We joke and tell friends that we bought swampland in Fayetteville, the only swampland in Fayetteville. I can't even imagine, even if they do single-family homes on that north end, that once all that concrete and roofing is in there, that isn't just going to add to the problem. I'm really shocked that they built our little street, because all of our backyards that back up to that golf course, they're always wet. We can't even have a dog because it's so wet, their paws would be muddy.
We need to have our city engineer go look at that. That's an engineering problem. We can move water.
Okay.
I mean, we can put in drains and
there's a
pipes and
problem back
pumps.
there. We have crawdads. It's amazing.
You sound like my hometown.
It's a very special crawdad, isn't it, Aubrey?
That's our neighborhood mascot.
The crawdad.
Well,
We should be able to fix that.
Yes, Aubrey.
yes, this land should not have any of that soil removed. They're talking about absorbent soil, and it protects the downstream houses, downstream lakes and rivers and whatever, because water soaks in there. It doesn't fly out like it does from the mountain. And so nothing should ever be built there. It should remain with that soil, whatever trees are there, have native grass growing there, and just a trail or two through there.
You're talking about the whole 125 acres?
Yes, sir. Excuse me. I really want to try, but I had to say something that nobody else probably would dare to say.
Thank you for your perspective.
It shouldn't be harsh, and it would be nice if the Corps of Engineers still did its job, which it did 10, 15 years ago, and come in and say, no, this is all wetland. These are wetland, true, but when it gets wet, it stays wet. And those crawdads, they have, each of them has a burrow, each mama crawdad. And she has 2 holes, and they come together. And when it rains, that's when you see mama crawdad. And if it's summertime and she's got babies, she's carrying them on her tummy, pick them up and look. I live on wetlands, my backyard floods, but it soaks in a few hours after it rains, totally dry. And we know it didn't flood anybody else because it went down there, flowed underground to the nearest stream. And that's what we should protect. We should protect soil and wetland and vegetation, particularly natural vegetation. Thank you.
What Aubrey was referring to, there's some things we recently discovered in the Environmental Action Committee, and the crawfish that are there have actually not been seen in many parts of Fayetteville, but they do exist at the Wolfie Wet Prairie. They've done extensive surveys there, and Graham's crayfish snake is one of the most endangered snakes, and it actually exists in some of these areas, and that's one of them as well. So it's just interesting. Well, it's not interested in you. It wants the crawfish.
No, I said we should save it.
We should save it. Most people say we need to kill it.
No. I have one question. Didn't you just have the public input committee that was asking about future plans for parks and purchases, and was that, I mean, I think the deadline is already passed of what we wanted, what they wanted, what the public wanted from our parks in the future.
I think it's still open.
Is it still open? Would that?
We're the city council, we can reopen it.
But would that be something that would qualify if enough people, you know, suggested to the city that be a future goal, was to acquire that property and for whatever reason, for a park or for wetlands?
There is no park in that part of Fayetteville. You've got Wilson Park and Walker Park and Gully Park. I mean, these are all large parks. And then the one that you're working on in the south, but there's nothing on the west side.
Really what we have there, we have, name always slips my mind, where the Iams Dog Park is.
We've got some little, you know, like corner lots.
What we heard last time was that tennis courts were something that we really wanted, so I've been pushing to have tennis courts installed in that park and actually have the infrastructure for the park actually brought up to speed a little bit more. I did speak with the city's finance director after receiving numerous inquiries about the possibility of even purchasing this, and it's not looking like that's something that's feasible even. Not that I would be opposed to that, but yes. But one thing, sorry, but Susan, but to answer your question, I'll find out if what the definite
especially if
information
there are
is.
these, you know, you're talking about 2 species of you know, endangered animals that in this area. That would definitely be something to look at.
Do you know the fair market value of that 125 acres?
I have no idea.
I suppose it's multiple millions.
I'm sure it is.
It was
Well,
a little
perhaps
over
not the
5.
entire amount, but the part that is very wet
Right.
Which they're
would
talking
probably
about
be not
selling
even
anyway.
feasible to build on. Perhaps a portion of that land could be deemed a park.
Sure.
And I do know that the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, they're supposed to be having another meeting on this topic.
That'll be the first Monday of the month.
Which will be next Monday.
Will be next Monday. So everybody's welcome to come to that meeting too as well. It was tabled at the last meeting, and so it'll be up for discussion again. Now, I would remind you that the Parks and Recreation Board's objective is to only address the park issue, whether we take the land as park or whether we take money in lieu of. So as far as trying to talk about whether development should be developed or not, That's not the entity that does that.
Sure.
The only thing that we will decide is whether we want money in lieu, or a portion of money and a portion of park, depending on what the park requirements are, based on the overall city protective. So, that's really what Parks and Rec Board does, is make that determination. Now, it could be that they decide to take money in lieu of, and then that pushes it on to the planning commission too. So, but it's not their place to decide whether or not the project goes forward, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sure.
So, but everybody's welcome to come. I mean, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from coming and talking.
Are there any grants or anything like that that we can research and see if they're for parks? Or, I mean, you know, my goodness sakes, there's grants for everything of some kind or another, it seems like, but how we could research some kind of something to maybe buy it as a park and put, you know, I mean, all these big water parks have been so successful, do something that make a little money. I mean, you know, or it may not be, I don't know what you do, you know.
And I'm not trying to stifle the creativity there, but almost on every city council agenda in the consent section of our agenda, we see grants coming through, because the city administration, they're always looking for grants to help pay for something. So that's been explored, it has been explored for multiple park funding priorities across Fayetteville, but not in that large of a...
There is a website called Grant Gopher
Yeah.
that you can go and look at the private entity if you want to set up something that's pursued a grant, and there are tons of grants available now, whether or not this will apply.
We had a question in the back of the room. Walt's next.
You can
Well,
go and then walk.
I was just gonna, she already said what I was gonna say, that we keep looking at the land as one whole piece and it can be broken up.
Mhm.
You know, and that's, I think, something that should be looked at, because I think towards the west side of the golf course or whatever that, you know, doesn't flood, it already has streets that have dead ended that would connect up to it, maybe connect to Weddington, you know, something like that maybe develop, but then the part, the hold on the ninth, or not the back nine, the back nine, towards the east side, you know, maybe those are what we look at as a park or whatever we're looking at, but, I just think it makes sense to maybe talk about breaking up the different sections. But sure.
That's a good point, especially when they're looking at taking money in lieu or actually dedicating parkland in the area. That'd be great to have that area dedicated
I think a
for a
lot of
certain
people
section.
do voice on that there, because I've personally talked to Connie Edmonston, and she's like, we do not need more parkland, like, we don't want any more land to maintain.
And that's the cash flow problem, is every time we buy more, build more, we have to maintain more, because we have, you know,
Well, and
just
the other
ongoing
thing,
capital.
you have to realize too, is when we take money in lieu of, the city is broken up into 4 quadrants.
Yeah.
And so anytime we take money in lieu of, then that money is reinvested within that quadrant in that particular park. So it's not like the money's gonna go to pay for something else, it's gonna go to enhance the area that the money comes from. And then I think we have 7 years, I think, to spend that money in a rolling account. So, I mean, if they decide to take money in lieu of, the money will be spent in that quadrant for parks in that area to either improve existing facilities or to increase adjacent property.
Well,
But you're right, I mean, if you look at the numbers, I would tell you that the Fayetteville Park system is by far outperforming any other parks in their same demographic size and cities. They do more with less as far as maintaining the properties at what we expect. So, I mean, they're pretty well maxed out as far as maintenance goes. So, all those things have to go into consideration about whether we add parkland to our inventory.
Just, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
As far as that north end, the wetland, which I think would be hard to develop anyway, could you all not expand? I think you were talking about 8 acres on either side of the creek, is that correct?
I don't know.
Well, I
Who
think
never saw that? I mean,
I think that's what they were talking about.
18.
Is it
The
18?
last map that I have shows that Lindsay was getting 18 acres.
I mean, could the city not ask for more to protect that wet land?
Well, the offset is a dollar amount, is what it is. It's, you look at, the property value, you also look at, the percentage of the property that's gonna be set aside, and that's what's determined the acreage that they want to pull in, or money, or a combination of both. It can be a combination of both. So it'll be interesting. I encourage you all to come Monday and talk.
Well, it just seems strange to me to buy, I think 35 feet on either side of Clyder Creek is what they're talking about.
Well, you've been waiting for a long time. Sorry about
I'm a
that.
patient person.
Sure.
I wanted to ask Alan, on Halsell, the property there, Archer's property, that city so nicely cleared for him when they put in the sidewalks. The same developer that is building the 3 collegiate housing units down by Hotz Park is the one who is apparently going to develop that, but has that come up for any discussion?
This is Hossel and where?
It's also at the corner of Sang.
Okay,
Between Sang and Cross.
right.
That little area. I know I've had a lot of drainage things.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. It flooded someone's basement, not.
It's just awful, there's gravel all over, I mean, and it's just a big old mess.
Every time I drive through there, I have to call someone to come fix it.
Well, it's bad.
It hasn't been fixed yet because they're waiting on, so
They
they don't have to fix it again.
Monday, the next rain will be there because they haven't done a very good abatement job. They put their little straw things up, but it's not where the nexus of the problem is, which is the little divided highway that they created there with all that gravel. And the last time we talked, you were told that was to put sewer in from the top of the hill, and I don't know how all that works.
I think there was a site plan that was approved but I don't think they're in compliance with the site plan. So I think that's where that is right now. But as far as any plan for housing at this point, I don't think there is. But, I mean, there's issues on the site plan in terms of what they promised to do that I don't think are.
And there's some disagreement between city engineering and transportation with the developer right now on who's fixing what and how. So I can forward you the information I've got recently on it.
I was just wondering why you're so confident that this isn't gonna go through rezoning. Like, why are you so confident, both of you, that the city council, the rest of them are gonna agree with you and vote no?
You're asking me?
Both of you, because you both said that you don't think that, like, I'm sure this is Lindsay's, like, dream plan. They know that it's not gonna be this dense, so they're willing to cut some. Is that gonna convince you or other people to vote yes to rezoning it?
Well, I can tell you that, I mean, I'm not sure about the rest of the council. I can tell you, I'm not gonna vote for multifamily zoning, so I'm not, maybe we got our wires crossed. We were
Maybe, but I
talking
thought I
with-
heard both of you say, oh, well, this probably won't happen.
No, not me.
My experience on the council has been when the neighborhood shows up and says, we don't want it, some capitalist guy just trying to make a profit on it's not gonna get his way. That's just that's been my observation.
Doesn't always happen that way.
It doesn't always happen that way, but it's happened that way for the last 6 months, Archie.
Yeah, but those other developers have the influence that Jim Lindsay has. I mean, I think that's what we're
I'm sorry?
out here.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear you.
In those other instances, with someone who is as influential as Jim Lindsay or his family, then
I don't think Jim Lindsay's involved in it.
sorry?
I don't think Jim Lindsay's involved in it.
Well, the family is.
Well,
Well,
I
his family
can
was his
tell
son.
you this, the people that influence me are in this room and not sitting in an office somewhere, so I hope the rest of the council feels the same way.
I just wanted to make a general comment about both of these issues for tonight in terms of rezoning, that there's been a lot of discussion about what the property owner needs, the developer needs, and what they need the city to do. And it's usually financial related. You know, I'm in financial trouble, or I can't build it if I don't have money for infrastructure, and those are really not appropriate considerations for the city council when they make rezoning decisions. Of course, they're in the universe of people's thoughts, and that's fine, and everybody should tell their story, but that's not the basis for rezoning. And I think that's been a discussion that past cities had to have about whether you can consider the economics of whether a development will work, of the situation of the owner of the property and the seller of the property, and what they need financially. I mean, realistically, what you can build on something, that it has to be profitable. I mean, nobody wants to build anything that's not going to make money or going to lose money. But I think, I'm just saying that from the standpoint of what is the things that can be considered in making a rezoning decision, it doesn't include the financial situation of the property owner who would like to sell.
And that's one of the best points I've heard.
But it doesn't, John.
And you know what the Arkansas case law has pointed to, and there's 7 or 8 major considerations you're talking about. And I think the best argument from the neighbor's standpoint that I've heard, and out of the hundreds of emails probably I've gotten on this, is one, we don't have the infrastructure to support the traffic that a multifamily development of that size would cause. And it's not compatible with the surrounding zoning. And those are the 2 best arguments to hear personally, because that goes to density as well, when you don't have the infrastructure to support it. And you also have an environmentally sensitive area. And another consideration that we can take is public feedback. And that's one of the other pieces of consideration that we're allowed to consider when changing zoning. And like Beverly said, according to Arkansas case law, the financial condition of the person trying to get a rezoning is not a consideration the council should.
May I respond to that concept, please? I haven't researched the Arkansas case law, Mr. Long, but we as a society, in a capitalistic society, that the free market is what tells people, we need your services, we desire your services, we want your services, or we want your development, we want your housing, or whatever it is you're offering. And if you're doing a good job on a cost-effective basis, you prosper. That's the market rewarding your ingenuity, your industry, your professionalism, your competence, and we want to reward those things. That's how we divide scarce goods and resources through the economy. So to say that it shouldn't have, economics shouldn't have any effect on that, I understand what you're saying. We should not be concerned so much about the owner. But when we're getting into zoning regulations, we're kind of flying in the face of private property ownership. I mean, we could come up with this notion that we, the city, have the final say on all land inside the city of Fayetteville. And that
we do.
I know, we do, and that kind of bothers me.
Well,
because
you're elected to represent us, though.
Yeah.
You said before that the property, like with your whole idea with economics, and the property owner is the one who assumes all the risk. That's the person developing it assumes all the risk. That's not true. We, the people living around there, absorb the risk too of the population density, our land values going down. So the surrounding property owners are absorbing the risk that the developer takes. Sure, they can fill it up with college students. They're not concerned about the quality of life there. They will still make a profit on college students living in those apartments.
Life is full of risk. I agree with you. The surrounding property owners have some degree of risk. I mentioned that earlier. When you buy next door to a golf course, you're assuming a risk that it may not always be a golf course.
But it's zoned. We bought our land knowing that it's zoned RSF4, and like that's
Right.
how it is. So we're fighting to keep it from being.
I think most of us are going to vote in your favor. I'm 90% sure I'm going to.
I'm just confused why where that.
All right, 91. You're making progress. You're not keeping me. I'll leave.
I did find the memo of what we're able to consider, but you have it.
I was just gonna say, I assume we're gonna try to wrap up here.
In about 2 minutes, yeah.
Pretty quickly. I just wanted to be sure I understand correctly that, Brian said they don't know what they're going to do, but if they're going to appeal the planning commission's decision, they have to do that this week, am I right? That has to be done within 10 days
They have to
of
file that within 10 days.
the planning commission's decision.
And I asked them specifically before the meeting if they planned on doing that, and he did not have an answer to that, so I'm not sure. I expect that they will, but I'm not sure.
You expect they will appeal?
Well, I mean, most people do when they're turned down.
Well, if they appeal, I would just like at this moment to implore both of you to vote against their appeal, to vote with the planning commission when that comes to the council, if they do.
Well, I will not be voting for downtown general zoning in this area. It's not appropriate, and it would set a precedent for other development.
Yeah, I mean, as we said at the planning commission meeting, downtown general just makes no sense in that neighborhood. Downtown general is supposed to be downtown, which is the other side of campus.
Yeah. Spot zoning, just a little bit. But I did want to read this to y'all as we close up. So the statutes in the state of Arkansas, here's what Arkansas allows us to consider. If I can get everybody pointed this direction so the cameras only pick up sound once. But so the statute authorizes us to look at efficiency and economy in the process of development, the appropriate and best use of land, convenience of traffic and circulation of people and goods, safety from fire and other dangers, adequate light and air in the use and occupancy of the buildings, healthful and convenient distribution of the population. If I could talk, it would help. Good civic design and arrangement, adequate public utilities and facilities, and wise and efficient expenditure of funds. And then the appellate courts have added a few things to that, and that's public opposition, which is what I'm hearing right now. Traffic, noise, decreased value of adjoining land, potential for criminal activity, increased litter, strain on the sewage service, and spot zoning and compatibility, which is what I briefly mentioned would be, in my opinion, if downtown general were approved for something so far away from the downtown area. So those are just the things that we're allowed legally to consider when looking at a rezoning request. So I try to carry this memo with me every time I'm thinking about a rezoning, so that.
Could you send us a copy of that on your?
Yeah, I've got a PDF in my email, actually.
Let me quickly share, and we'll close from history. Joseph Stalin's chief of police had a saying, "You bring me the man, I'll find the crime." What he was referring to was in Stalinist Russia, there were so many regulations, everybody was guilty of something. So if you want to get rid of your political enemy, just bring him in. We'll find something he's guilty of and put him away. Now, if he's your friend, we won't bother. You see how hideous that is? We could set the speed limit in Fayetteville to 2 miles per hour everywhere. Now, who's going to be guilty of exceeding the speed limit? Probably everybody, okay? But we just prosecute the people we don't like, or we don't like their politics, or whatever they... You see, that's a hideous process. I'm concerned that we might be doing some of that with our zoning ordinances, that we make the restrictions so tight on everything, and then we just let our friends get by. I mean, I'm watching a development between my house and my office where a whole hillside is being excavated. I thought we had a hillside ordinance to stop that, but apparently it didn't stop them. Okay, so I wonder how they got by it and nobody else does. I mean, it just bothers me that we might be sliding into Stalinist Fayetteville, and I don't want that to happen. Remember, I like freedom. I want people to be free. And that doesn't mean that Lindsay Management is free to build apartments wherever he or she wants to. I agree with that statement. That's why I'm 91% sure I'm voting in your favor, etc. Right here, you increased 1%. That's right. Anyway, thank you all for coming out. I appreciate hearing your perspective. I really do.
Thank you.
Well, and if y'all have any more questions, I'll stick around for a few more minutes. Again, I have a stack of cards up here. If you don't have my phone number or contact information, you're welcome to take one. Send me some feedback as we go through the process, and appreciate all y'all coming out. We're adjourned.